Take two. I recorded 30 minutes of my rambling about this game. I was praising it for 30 minutes, and then my brain decided, let's think of something else, and my train of thought just went to the trash, to the pits. And instead of just ending the recording and saving the recording and just doing some editing later, I lost the previous recording. So the 30 minutes is gone. I'm 30 minutes older, and it's time wasted. That sounds familiar, since you're looking at Final Fantasy XIII here, time wasted. But I'm going to surprise you in saying that this game is an example of time not wasted. It's just an example of a game wasted. You get the trope here. All right. Well, I don't have a hard copy of Final Fantasy XV to show you, so imagine this hand here is Final Fantasy XV. Imagine this hand here is Final Fantasy XV. So I'm going to have my hand down right here. I'm going to be pointing to it, and then whenever I point to it, imagine a point to Final Fantasy XV. I want to say that Final Fantasy XIII and Final Fantasy XV are like two sides of a coin. They're like two sides of a coin. This side of the coin is very story-heavy. This had people who worked really hard to establish character, they established lore, they established setting, and they did beautiful. They did a great job at building a believable place in which people live, in which a setting in which all this happens. They made it really believable. And then over here, the story is very piss poor. It's very piss poor in Final Fantasy XV. It's garbage. It's not garbage. It's just disappointing. And both games are two sides of the same coin in regards to disappointment. One disappoints you for story. One disappoints you for being a game. It's like this has a good story and world and setting, and this has a good setting, but it has a shit story, and it doesn't give you anything. But it's a really fun game. At least to me. The gameplay was fun. The combat system was fun. It felt like I was playing a game. This feels like you're playing an auto battle on rails interactive movie. A good movie, but it's a game. It should be a game. It shouldn't be a movie. If this was gonna be a movie, then just release a Blu-ray or something. Make it Spirits Within 2, but don't call it Spirits Within 2. Please don't call it that. If you called it Spirits Within 2, nobody would give a fuck about it. So I get why they made it a game now, because if they made it a movie, it would have been shat on, because people remember Spirits Within. They made a movie into a game, and then they made a game without a story. They tried to make a game they made a movie, and then they made a game, but they didn't connect it over here at Final Fantasy XV here. They didn't connect it. So let's talk about the thing I go to video games for, though. I go to video games for a fun pastime, but also for good story. So this would have given me the fun pastime for combat, but I wouldn't feel like there's any need to the combat. Like, I would be pretty bare bones in the story, and I just wouldn't be invested. So the gameplay might be fun, but I would take this game for its lack of story, and I would slide it away. Now you're looking at a game that I ended up beating 5 times throughout the course of my life. And I enjoyed all 5 playthroughs. Because to me, Final Fantasy XIII is an interactive movie. A movie that I really like. And it's a game that's very bare bones, on rails. Interactive movie that's easy. I don't have to try too hard. I was able to beat all the Titan trials. I was able to beat all the bosses, all the secret bosses. I was able to complete the story. it was just very easy. But while the gameplay was pretty bland, it looked pretty. The gameplay was just pretty bland and boring in regards to, like, actually being a game. This thing fails as a game, but it succeeds in every other category, I'd like to argue. Other categories being, let's say, I like having visual representation, so I'm going to say, write little tallies here. In regards to graphics, I'd say it wins. In regards to story, I would say it wins. In regards to, say, character, I would say it wins. In regards to, say, pacing, I would say it's very fast paced. We're moving very fast in the first half of the game, and then we go all the way. Then we go to pulse, and then the pacing just dies. So imagine that high point right here is fast-paced story, then imagine this lower point higher for you. But imagine this lower point. Imagine this lower point as this low pacing. That's high pacing. So we start fast, and then we die. Then we were very slow because they gave you too much game, and there's no story. And that will be a thing I'd say it fails on. Let's talk about music. I'd say it succeeds in music too. I wouldn't say it beats any of the older Final Fantasies, regards to like 9, 10, 12, 8, 7, 6, 4. It doesn't beat those soundtracks. It's not like breakout, amazing soundtrack that you want to go out and buy the OST for. But it's a good soundtrack in that you don't want to mute the music in your sound settings to go listen to your Spotify or whatever. If you use Spotify, I use YouTube. But it's music that you don't mind playing during the game. I don't even think you can turn off the music, but whatever. We have 4 out of 5 categories that this game, I feel, excels at. Graphics, story, characters, and music. All 4 are categories I use to tally and judge a good film. So, if this was a film, I would say it succeeds on all marks. I wouldn't give it an A. I would give it like B plus. I would give it, as if this was a film, I would give it a B plus. And as a game, I would give it a B minus, because we have this big thing here that really kills it. This little circle here is called pacing. The pacing is fast, lots of story. You can flow through the game and go through the story, but then you die and you have too much game, you have no story, the world's too open, people like that, but there's nothing. I guess that's the point in saying that Pulse, once you get to Pulse, it's huge, but it's empty. It's lifeless. There's nothing but monsters and Seath here, and that's the point. In saying that this place is a desolate, beautiful wasteland. Kind of like Earth if all the humans died out. But hey. Now, as you can see, this is not a discussion files, because what I like to do with what I want to try to do is talk about a lot of these games in a form of discussion files. And I'm probably going to do that with the 3rd entry, but for the 1st and the 2nd entry in this series, these are rant files, because while I love this game and all the things that would make it a good film, it starts to fall apart in all the ways that make it a good game. While I like an auto battle fixture in a grind-heavy JRPG, Breath of Fire 1 and 2 have auto battle. Final Fantasy IV Remastered has auto battle. I believe Final Fantasy 1 and 2 Remastered on the PSP has auto battle. Alchemist War has auto battle. It's just, while I support an auto battle function in a grind-heavy game to help speed up the grind, to make the battles fly faster, well, I can support that. making the auto battle the primary focus of the game kind of destroys the point of making a game, because you're just watching the battle. The AI learns throughout the battle. If you use a fire attack against an aqua monster and the fire attack doesn't work, it's not going to use a fire attack for the next time you attack. It's going to learn, and then it's going to remember the weaknesses of the enemies. It's going to keep using the thunder against the aqua monsters that are fire. So the AI is good. The AI is good, but imagine the idea with the gambits with Final Fantasy XII. Imagine they forced the gambits on you. Everybody has gambits now. It's all on. It's all auto, and you don't do anything. You just click X. 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 Oh, the game's over. Oh, the battle's over. Alright, next. Clap. New battle. X. 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 Oh, shit, I'm damaged. R1, L1, this paradigm. X. X. R1, this paradigm. X. X. Alright, the battle's over. Now imagine repeating that hundreds of times. Imagine repeating that type of battle, if you could call it such, for the entire game. It's the entire focus of this game and the sequel. They do a little bit something different with the sequel, but it's still the same type of combat. So, but we're going to talk about this first here. But imagine doing that type of battle for the whole game, and it doesn't change. That ends up being a very bare bones combat. It looks pretty. Everybody looks pretty doing their things. It's just, I wish it was a bit different. But the game is designed to be fast-paced. While you can switch from auto to manual, the AI is always going to pick all of your attacks immediately upon learning which ones are optimal to do against the enemy. So even if you wanted to click manual, you'd probably still end up clicking the same attacks the auto battle would have clicked. You're just slower because you have to scroll through the menu of attacks in real time while you're getting banged up. So you're having to pay attention to a menu while your allies are getting banged up. So you click beep, beep, and attack. And you do it. When you could have just clicked auto battle and would have picked usually the exact same abilities. And bam, it would have done it right away, saving you some time to keep an eye on your allies' HP, and the enemy's HP, and the stagger bar. The idea of the combat was that you focused on all these meters. It's a lot of management, party management, enemy management, and the paradigms that you create with the job roles: Commando, Ravager, Medic, Saboteur, Synergist, and Sentinel. Each one plays a vital role in the game. You got the Commando, which attacks using non-elemental physical and magical attacks. They cannot build up the stagger bar, but they can halt the rate at which the stagger bar decreases over time. They can make it decrease even slower, so that you could keep building up the points. The Ravager is like your black mage type character. They attack primarily with elemental-based attacks. You eventually will get physical-based elemental attacks. They attack, and it builds up the stagger bar really fast, but also depletes really fast unless you have a Commando there attacking and banging to make sure the stagger bar doesn't go down. The medic hands out beers. No, the medic it heals people by handing out beers. It heals people in the battle. That's basically all the medic does. The sentinel is the tank. He guards, defends, he draws your fire, draws the enemy's attacks. While the medic can either heal him or whatever. Combat clinic is one of the paradigms where you have a sentinel and two medics. And the medics work on healing everybody, while the sentinel works on drawing enemy attacks and and defending against them. And the most ideal sentinel is Snow. another good Sentinel is Fang. They both come with Sentinel by default. The best commandos end up being Fang, Snow, Fang, Snow, and Lightning. Why not Lightning? Sure. Those three end up being good commandos. Hope is a pretty decent commander, but you want to make him a Raptor Synergist instead. So let's talk about the Synergist. The Synergist is the buffer. The Synergist buffs you. He buffs your abilities. He gives you Protect, he gives you Shell, he gives you Haste, and Bravery, Faith. He builds up your stats to make you do better. That's all the Synergist does. And Saz and Hope make for good synergists, with Saz being more physically oriented and Hope being more defensively oriented. As a person who likes to kill people before they get hit, I chose Saz. And the next one you have is Saboteur, which is the debuffer. In terms of synonymous terminology, a saboteur sabotages. So you debuff the enemy, you make their attack go down, you make their defense go down, you might poison them, you might make them slow down. And for Vanille, she'll eventually learn an ability called Death, where you can just instantly kill somebody. It has a very low percentage chance of working, but we would use the Vanille Death ability in the end game against the big beasties. And that's the game. That's the game. You just fiddle around with those roles. You get 3 people in the field at a time, and you fiddle around with your paradigms. You can swap up to 6 of them at a time. You can pre-build each of your paradigms between 3 characters in those 6 roles, and then you win battles. That's all you do, really. This is it. It's pretty self-explanatory, pretty bare bones, and I was able to beat it. I was able to beat the hardest bosses. I was able to beat Attackus. I was able to beat all the Titan Trials. I was able to beat the final bosses, and it was easy. It's just menus. It's not even menus. It's just watching enemy bars and clicking, click, and let the auto battle take care of itself. You could imagine that as a game would fail. You could imagine that as a game, that idea would fail. And it did. It failed. People didn't like it. But the thing is that a lot of people didn't like the characters either. They thought Lightning was too bland. They thought Hope was too whiny. They thought Vanille was too spunky. They thought Fang was too Fang. They thought Snow was too much of a dude bro. And I don't think anybody disliked Sass. I think everybody liked him. But one likable character doesn't save a movie. You know, one likable character doesn't save a movie. X-Men Origins still failed. Even though you had Hugh Jackman, we like him, but it still failed. And so one likable party member still doesn't save the game to a lot of people who played this. But I justified myself when I played this game 5 times. I ended up liking all of the party members. There was something to like about each one. And I suppose a story gives you as much as you're willing to take from it, if that makes sense. For example, if you're going into a game and you're the type of person who skips cutscenes to go directly into the gameplay, you are the type of person who wouldn't give the story a chance to give you its story, you know? Like, you would be impatient, you wouldn't care, and you would immediately dislike a lot of these people who on the surface feel dislikable. And, it'd be easy to be like that. But if you're willing to give the story the time and the effort to tell itself the story, you'll end up liking the characters. I like Lightning because she represents that common trope in Japanese media where you have the older sibling taking care of the younger sibling, because the parents are never around. It's a common thing in Japanese media, because it happens a lot in the real world. The parents are always working, and nowadays, especially with hypercapitalism and all that stuff, the parents are always working. Usually the mother will sometimes stay home, but now both parents are working. They're in the company, they're always overseas. Sometimes you're left at home all summer with just your big sister, and they have to get strong, and they have to be a parent to you because the parents are not around. That's how it was with Lightning. Lightning had to grow up fast because their parents were not around. That's why she feels all crusty, grumpy pants. She's a crusty, grumpy pants because she became her parents, because her parents weren't around to take care of her little sister, so she had to stunt her own emotional growth. She had to become the rock for Sarah, the younger sister. And once you start analyzing those things, you can start to appreciate the personality, and there is growth in this personality. She is very emotionally stunted because she wasn't allowed to feel emotions growing up, because if she showed weakness to her sister, that was a disservice to her sister, she felt, so she had to show nothing but strength in order to raise her sister right, because the parents weren't around, and then she went to the army, and then she became all disciplined, and you can imagine sympathizing with a character like this once you start to realize who she is. Throughout the course of the game, she spends a large portion of time with Hope, the youngest character and most emotional of the group, because he was raised very sheltered. He was raised sheltered. He was raised with loving parents. He was the emotional one. He showed a lot of emotion and humanity, and that started to break the tough heart of the crusty, grumpy pants, and crusty, grumpy pants started to become feely. She started to feel things, and so and Hope started to get some of crusty, grumpy pants' strength. And that's the point of character dynamics, you see? The weak, emotional character starts to get confidence and strength by seeing the idol of strength, the confidence, despite her confidence being fake confidence and fake strength, because she's also weak and emotional, but she wasn't allowed to show any of that, and she was able to accept the emotional side of him while able to help him get his hopes, get his strength and confidence, and they both grow by showing their weaknesses and their strengths to one another, and then they build each other. And I thought that was cool, man. So let's talk about Hope. He's the other character here. He is this 11, 12-year-old kid, sheltered, loving parents. His parents are going through some sort of divorce, and it's very troubling and traumatizing for the kid. He might blame himself for their parents splitting up. He might have a lot of fights with his dad, and he thinks that his dad leaving his mom or his mom leaving his dad are his fault, when it's not really his fault. It's just two people growing apart. It's as simple as that, but he blames himself. So he's getting emotional, so the mother gets the kid, and they go take a vacation to get away from this drama. They get away from the drama, okay? And then drama finds them in Bodum, and they get into quarantine, and then hell breaks loose, and then his mother somehow dies in front of his eyes, and you can imagine how broken this kid must be. You can imagine the ringer that he was put through. You see, once you start allowing yourself to feel empathy for these characters, they stop being annoying. Hope was annoying to me the first time I played this game, because he was always angry with Snow, who was my favorite character at the time. But then, by the third or fourth playthrough, Hope was one of my favorite characters instead. It was crazy. The character I hated was now the character I loved, because I could empathize. I started to understand why he acted the way he did. You try to empathize. Put yourself in his shoes. If that crap happened to you, what would you be doing? How would you be acting? and you can understand how that type of empathizing mindset when you're playing games, and how you can start to appreciate these characters when a lot of other people wouldn't. Lightning, Hope, Saz, Snow, Vanille, Fang. Each one has a quality about them that makes them charismatic in their own right, and their dynamics with one another. Every moment that you get, even like that little side story where Saz and Vinny all go to this amusement park to try to get away from the stress and the trauma and the problems in their lives, and they just want a moment to breathe, because they haven't had a moment to breathe this entire run, because they've been on the run from the enemies and the army and the military. They've been after, everybody's been after them the entire time, and they just want to breathe. So even those types of things that feel like a whole side thing are important. They serve a purpose. It is in my belief that a moment is not wasted when you are building your story, when you're building your setting, when you're building your character dynamics and all that other stuff. The moment isn't wasted. This amusement park side quest was not wasted, because these two, in their terms of personality, would have done this. Let's talk about Saz. Saz is this father approaching middle-aged. He's a civilian pilot who is a single dad who is trying to do his best for his kid. And then his kid gets caught up in this mystical, magical menagerie of craziness. And he has to do what he can to help his kid. But the stress of doing all of that has made it to the point where he's just ready to give up. He thinks his son is lost, and he's ready to throw in the towel. The old man is ready to die. And when he's branded as a pulse l'Cie, which is like this servant magician type thing to a god type character, once he's branded as a pulse l'Cie, he has this sort of time limit placed on him, and he feels like it's a lose-lose scenario. You win, you turn to crystal. You lose, you become a monster. Either way, you're dead. Either way, you're dead. So he feels like his life is already over. So he just wants a minute to breathe. To get away, if only for a moment. The nightmare that is his life right now. You see, once I start humanizing these characters, you could start empathizing with them. You could start feeling for them. And the graphics engine in this game really works to give that feeling of character to these characters. This type of animation was groundbreaking for its time. It was the late 2000s, and we did have Uncharted, which was very realistic in its animation, and there was a reason for that. Everybody was in mocap suits acting everything out, so that's why the hands felt like they were really hands, and all that other all that other stuff. And that was what this graphics for this game was like. That's what Final Fantasy XIII was like. And that level of graphics combined with the stellar voice cast for all 6 of these main characters, and even the bad guys and their voice actors, it was powerful stuff, man. Probably not as powerful as the PS1 era Final Fantasy games, but it made for a watchable movie. It made for something I would have wanted to watch in a theater. But it was a game. It was a game. I liked the movie more. I wanted to end it here. I wanted to end the video here at the 30-minute mark, but I haven't talked about Vanille and Fang yet. I feel like this video wouldn't be complete without talking about them, so I'm going to talk about them really quick. I'm not going to get into the rest of the story of this game. I would recommend that you, if you want to play it, but I would actually recommend that you just watch the movie version on YouTube. Just go look it up, Final Fantasy XIII movie, because this makes for a better movie than it does a game, at least in my opinion. If you like the game, good on you. I do too, but I feel like it's a better movie than a game. It's a better movie than a game. So just watch the cutscenes, watch the story, engage with the characters. So let's talk about Vanille and Fang real quick. Vanille and Fang are these people who are out of time. They are from an old, long time ago when things are a lot different. They were turned to crystal because something happened, and then they broke free from the crystal because they were given a new task to do later on, and they get roped up with the main character, the main four: Snow, Lightning, Snow, Lightning, Hope, and Sass. They get roped up with those guys. Oh, I forgot to talk about Snow as well. We'll get to him in a minute. So they get roped up with these four, and then their shenanigans. Vanille gets roped up with Hope first, and she starts to help Hope cheer up. She starts to help cheer Hope up from just losing his mother. She tries to get him to act instead of grieve, because he was starting to grieve and shut down. Vanille taught Hope to act, not to grieve. So Hope was starting to act instead of grieve. It was just, again, characters build great stuff. So, and then she gets roped up with Saz, and instead of teaching Saz to act, she started teaching Saz to run, to relax, to get away. And Saz needed that. He needed a break. His entire theme, his theme song, is called Can't Catch a Break. Yeah, it's jazzy, it's really snazzy, but that's the name of one of his themes. Can't Catch a Break. So, Vanille teaches Saz to relax. And her interactions with these four characters, partially out of responsibility for getting them into the predicament that they're in now, but also as a growing familial tie that she has to Saz, to Hope, and eventually to the other two, which she barely interacts with, but she really interacts with Hope and Saz, because they needed it, really. They needed it. Lightning needed the interaction with Hope. She didn't really need the interaction with Vanille. She needed it with Hope. So that they gave those. So they gave that to her. Fang didn't really need any interaction with anybody except for maybe Snow and Vanille. And Lightning. She has a moment with Lightning. So she gets that. What is needed is given. Now we can hope, want and beg and plead and cry that everybody gets to interact with everybody and everybody gets to have a minute for each other. But you can't always just do that. You have to do what is needed, not just do quantity for quantity's sake. So the character interactions that are needed are given, if that makes sense. Vanille is this chipper type character who is trying to run away from a very bad deal, just like Saz. And Saz ends up teaching Vanille that running away from a very bad deal isn't going to make the bad deal go away. No matter how much Saz may want that bad deal to go away, it's still there. It's still there. So the break, they had their break. Now it's time to get back at it. And Vanille learns that. She learns that she has to get back at it. She can't just run away from everything. And that's good and powerful character growth. And as for Fang, Fang has a sense of duty. She has a sense of duty. She feels like the person who signed up for this job. She signed up to do this stuff. Vanille didn't sign up to do this stuff. She was not the one who volunteered as tribute. Fang was the one who volunteered as tribute. And she's looking after Vanille because she's not cut out for this type of work. And then she gets to meeting Snow and Lightning, and these two are soldier-type archetypes, and Fang really hits off with those two types of archetypes, but she doesn't ever learn to cut loose, she doesn't ever learn to relax, she doesn't ever learn to unwind. It's always the job at hand, it's always the next mission, it's always what we gotta do, we gotta beat the bad guy, we gotta stop the wave, we gotta beat the Ragnarok, we gotta do the thing, we gotta do that, we gotta do this now, we gotta do that now. She's always that take charge, go-to gal. And she doesn't really have much else aside that. And that is a weak part of the game, because she's the last person to join, so she gets the lowest amount of growth. But I suppose even just having that small amount of personality is important, because that sense of duty is also shared with the other 5. The other 5 are just more hesitant about that sense of duty. Fang knows what she has to do, and she knows what she has to do it. Vanille knows what she has to do, but she's hesitant to do it, and she wants to run away from it. Saz doesn't know what he has to do. He doesn't want to do what he has to do. He wants to catch a break, but he knows he has to do what he has to do. Lightning doesn't want to do what she has to do. She knows what she has to do. She has a sense of duty, but her priorities are different from the priorities that have been given to her. She wants to defy that fate. Snow has a sense of duty. His sense of duty is not the same as Fang's sense of duty, but he's willing to adopt Fang's sense of duty and Lightning's sense of duty and his own sense of duty, because duty is duty, bro. But his primary duty is to Sarah. His duty is to Sarah, and he thinks if he does these other duties, he can get to her. His primary motivation in this entire game is the woman that he loves. And that is powerful. I'm sorry, man, but I'm a sap for that type of character, man. That type of dedication to the person that you love is amazing. And I know a lot of people make fun of Snow and Sarah's relationship. They think that Snow is like this 30-year-old dude, bro, and he's trying to date this high schooler. Let's take a step back, man. Let's take a step back. Sarah is 18 years old. She could date whoever the fuck she wants. She's not a minor anymore. Okay? Stop being a Lightning. But let's look at how old Snow is for a moment. We're gonna pull out our little phone here. We're gonna look up how old Snow is. Snow Villiers' age. He is 21. He's 21. That is a 3-year difference, okay? I know some relationships that have a 10-year difference. You look at some celebrities and you see a 20-year difference. 3 is not a big deal, okay? He's just a giant ape of a Jason Momoa dating a normal-sized human being. It's fine. But it's funny to joke about. So that's Final Fantasy XIII and Final Fantasy XIII's characters. We are almost 40 minutes into this thing, and I haven't even started talking about the story. I'm not going to talk about the story, because this is something that I feel like you have to watch to understand. And you may not even understand after watching the film. You may not even understand after watching it. And if you don't understand after watching it, there are other videos... There are other videos out there with good story synopsis, good lore breakdowns, and all that stuff. I didn't want to do that because I knew other people already did it for me, so go to see them instead. This is just an audiocast. This is an audiocast about Final Fantasy XIII. I'm not going to be going into everything about all the games that I talk about. I'm not going to be going to every little nook and cranny. I'm not going to be going into every single aspect of the game. I'm just going to be going into certain parts that I feel stood out to me. And to me, what stood out to me in Final Fantasy XIII was the concept of character and the interactions of character. And I thought that each one of these characters, with the minor exception of Fang, was probably not as developed as the other 5. But all 6 were still likable. I felt like these characters were amazing. I felt like they helped each other with each other's weaknesses and strengths, especially the dynamic between Lightning and Hope. Their weaknesses and strengths differed, but they helped balance each other out and helped each character grow as a result. I felt the dynamic between Hope and Vanille was good and helped him. For Hope needed a moment to he needed that push to get out from that trappings of grief over losing his mother. Snow, he doesn't really have too many dynamics with everybody. His main dynamic is the Lightning. She's the older sister of his girlfriend. Lightning is giving up because she thinks now that she's the sea that it's over. She can't save her sister. But Snow is that one ray of light. He is that one ray of dumb, foolish hope. That sheer optimism that completely defies reality. That sometimes you need that level of optimism. Sometimes you need that type of person to tell you, I don't care what fate says. I don't care what reality says. I don't care what the law says. I'm going to do this because I believe in it. That was Snow's character to me, and I felt that was what made him incredibly likable. It's not realistic. It's not. He's an idealist. But sometimes you need that little bit of idealism to get yourself out of the crusty, grumpy pants reality and just start to dream a little bit. Give yourself some balance. Lightning put Snow's feet on the ground. Snow put lightning in the clouds. A little bit. Just think about that for a moment. Maybe give this a chance. Just watch the movie version on YouTube. And if you don't have the attention span to watch the movie version and you feel like you have to play a game and go through the motions of that way just to catch all the story, if you feel like you have to do that, then play the game. It's also worth playing. It's not as good of a game as the others because there's very little game to be had. It's very bare bones. But I would argue that it's the same amount of bones as, say, Final Fantasy 1 through 5 had. I would argue that it does have the same level. It's just on a faster pace. You see, you may be on an auto-battle type thing, but you're still dabbling with menus. You're still dabbling with levels and HP bars and trying to decide which things you need and which ones go where. It's just not on that level of depth. For example, I like to compare Final Fantasy XIII's growth to Final Fantasy X's growth. The sphere grid to the Crystarium. I prefer the sphere grid myself, because it's just a little bit more free. The sphere grid is a little bit more free in how you grow your characters. The Crystarium is very rigid. You're on rails, just like in the story. But I think that might actually be meta, in a way. It might actually be a little bit meta, in a way. I don't know if this was on purpose to make the game the way it was, but, how do I put this? There is a battle theme in this game called Defy Your Fate. Defier of Fate. Lightning, that's her. And fate is like this thing that determinates you to be on rails. You're on rails through life. Everything's been determined. It's all fate. And Lightning says, fuck the rails. Fuck the fates. I'm gonna do this. And that's what she eventually learns to be like. At first, she just accepts the determinism, but then she accepts Snow's reality that determinism doesn't always determine the way things are. You have to put your head in the clouds a little bit to see a different perspective on how determinism and fate and all that other crap works. In the end of the day, there's always a way out. I severely doubt anybody has watched all 45 minutes of this audiocast, but if you have, thank you. Thank you. I rambled long enough. I'm not going to keep you here any longer. Give this game a shot, or don't. It's your choice.